don't want to call him the navigator, but he operated the radar.
Oh, he operated the radar.
So he was,
They put me on a gun. Artillery.
I think he wasn't an officer.
No, I know
He
that.
went as far as he could go without being an officer.
You can't be an officer unless you're a college graduate.
Well, he was a college graduate.
Oh, he was a college graduate and he wasn't an officer?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know how that happened.
Well, he thinks he knows how that happened.
He thinks he knows how it happened?
Yeah.
Usually when you're a college graduate, you become an officer. That's the rule.
He
I
always
wasn't a college graduate.
he always claimed
I
that
didn't even
it
graduate
was-
high school.
He had a captain who was very anti-Semitic, and that was his claim.
Okay.
And he had his last name was Goldberg, so it was real obvious he was Jewish.
He was Jewish, right? Fleisher could be Jewish or could be German.
So, anyways, you ready?
Yep. Yeah, we're set.
Okay, so I guess to start off, if you could just state your name.
My name is Irving Fleisher. I live at 826 Marlow Road, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, 08003.
And to get just a little bit of background,
I am a Second World War veteran. I enlisted at the age prior to becoming 18, which was at the end of 1943. And
well, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Philadelphia, South Philadelphia. I think it was 416 Cancel Street or something like that. It was on Cancel Street, the 400 block of Cancel Street. And I lived there with my parents. My parents had 6 children. I was one of 6.
Where'd you fall within the age range of the 6?
I'm the oldest. So I was the oldest of the 6 children. And my father never made very much money, so I went to work at a young age to help my mother with finances.
So at 18, had you finished high school?
No. I went to work when I was 16 and a half, and I worked in a glove factory, and then at 17 I worked in a machine shop. I worked in a machine shop because I took machine shop in school. And after getting that machine shop experience, by the time I was 18, I went into the service. But when I was a machinist, when I worked in a machine shop, I was making like 3 times the amount of money my father was making. So.
So were you drafted into the service, or?
No,
did you
I joined because I wanted to be in the Navy. And so I joined for 4 years, but very strangely, when the war ended, they sort of had too many people there and just threw me out also. So.
So your goal was to stay in the Navy?
No, my goal was to stay in the Navy, but my goal basically was to join the Navy. If I'm going to be in a war, I'd rather be in the Navy than be in the Army or in the Air Force or anything else. That was my selection. That's where I wanted to be. That's the service I wanted to be in. Anyway, I went through. You had a month or 2 where they had to train you. So I went through training and everything else, and then they assigned me to a ship, an LSD, which is a landing ship dock. Now, unbeknown to me, that was a brand new ship. They were still building it when they assigned me to it, which means that it hasn't passed maneuvers or anything like that, and it hasn't passed any tests. So on the landing ship dock, the front part of it is built like a regular ship. It has 20 millimeters and a 5 millimeter gun. And the purpose of the ship was to take small craft to wherever the government was going to invade. And a small craft, the back of the ship would drop down because it was like a big bathtub, the back of the ship. The back of the ship drops back, and the small craft with soldiers aboard it come get on a small craft, and then they go to the island or whatever country they're supposed to invade. So that was a new type of ship.
So you actually had the small craft, the landing craft on your ship.
Which that was different than an LST. An LST also carried soldiers, but they carried the soldiers right aboard the ship itself. And the front of the ship dropped down. So there was a difference between an LST and an LSD.
Well, I'm familiar with the LSTs. I'm not familiar with the LSDs.
Right. So you know what an LSD
Sure,
is.
sure. The front drops.
Okay, so
the
therefore,
front drops down.
so you can picture now the back of the ship dropping down, and out of the back of the ship comes these other smaller vessels, and they're the vessels go with the soldiers go towards land. So that was the object, and that was I think that was a new type of ship.
So what was your role on board?
The first, in the beginning, I was a seaman. So I was I was on the 20 millimeter guns, and I decided, well, I wanted to be, since I had experience with machinery and equipment, I knew I had some electrical background. They put me down. I went into the electrical group, which worked below decks. So in the beginning, I was above decks. Then later on, I was below decks. And when I worked below decks, one of the activities was, in the beginning, was to load the 5-millimeter guns. And then later on, I got transferred to another section, and I was assigned to help the electrician, so I became an electrician helper. So this was all part of my training, but the main thing is the ship, when it took a while before the ship was ready to go out on maneuvers. In other words, everybody was sent home, and they would come back. You'd send you home again until the ship was ready to go. When the ship was ready to go, this took a good 6-8 months.
Oh. Where was the ship located?
Norfolk. Finally, the ship went out on maneuvers, and it failed maneuvers, which meant that it had to come back to be fixed. Okay, then they fixed it. You went home again until they fixed it. Then you came back to the ship. So this was all a waiting period that I was going through. Then when we were ready, they said, okay, we're on our way to Germany. So the ship was on its way to Germany.
Do you remember what date approximately?
I would say we were on the way to Germany. I would say about maybe a week before they surrendered.
So you're in 45 already.
Right. So we're already in 45, and we're on our way there, and we almost reach, I think the first stop was supposed to be England. Before we get there, we get a notification to turn around. The war is over. turned around, and now we're on our way to Japan. And we had to go through the canals. So we go all the way back. We go through the canals. This was a very interesting experience with them.
Okay. So this is the Panama Canal.
This is the Panama Canal. So now we're in the Panama Canal. We're going in and out. We finally get to the Panama Canal. We're on our way to Germany now. So now, to Japan. Excuse me. We're on our way to Japan. So we're stopping at the islands first. And we stop at these at a number of these islands, and we continue on going towards Japan.
Do you remember any of the islands that you stopped at?
I don't remember.
It's okay.
Finally, we get to, I think we're almost near Japan, to the group that was supposed to go to Japan in that area. And
maybe the Philippines? Or?
Yeah, the Philippines. I think it was the Philippines. We probably had to get to the Philippines with a group there and go with that group to Japan. And all of a sudden, we get a notification that the war is over. And the next thing I know is that the war is over, and now they're starting to get rid of millions of sailors that were in the service.
So let me ask you, when you heard that the war was over, and your boatmates heard that the war was over, were you? I'm sure you were excited.
We were excited about it. We were happy, but you see, I thought I had another year and 3 months to go, something like that, to finish my time. But that's not how it worked. They told me that I would have to join the reserves, but the active reserves. And I said, I don't want to be in the active reserves, because I didn't want to have to leave house, leave home, and come back and forth. So I figured I don't want to be in the active reserves. They said, okay, you'll be in the active reserves. And that's how it ended the whole thing. But theoretically, had I been on any other ship but this LSD, which they didn't need anymore, because they got rid of practically everybody on the ship. They didn't need the LSD, so I was able to get out. Had I been on any other ship but an LSD, I would have had to serve my year and a half to complete my time.
So did the ship sail home?
The ship went home. They took the ship. The ship turned around and they brought it right back. They brought it right back.
To Norfolk, or to the West Coast?
They brought it right back to Norfolk, and we went through the canal again.
And you were discharged in Norfolk?
Yeah, I think I was in Norfolk that I was discharged.
So basically, you spent the whole time on shipboard sailing.
Shipboard sailing. That's what the whole thing was. I said I was lucky to be on the right ship. Little did I realize, upset with it, because it was always waiting for the ship to be ready for. Incidentally, that we did go out, and we did go when the ship was done. We did fire at targets on the 20 millimeters. I was shooting up at targets up in the air. So I was getting training how to use that gun.
So the 20 millimeter is an anti-aircraft gun.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I was getting training on that.
So were you the actual gunner?
I was a gunner. That's when I was a seaman.
So you would train as you would sail, or did you train when you got to certain islands?
Oh no. We did our training before the ship. Before that ship went out.
Okay.
That was part of the ships. In other words, a new ship. they had to make sure that the ship. Now, I forgot to tell you one other thing. We ran into a tycoon. This is the most important part. I was almost killed.
Typhoon.
I'm not almost didn't get here. When the ship was on its way to Germany, we ran into head on to a tycoon. The back of the ship was like a big bathtub. We couldn't get the water out fast enough.
So what'd you
And it
do?
Well, so the executive officer says, let's abandon ship. So he says, abandon ship. So everybody gets ready to abandon ship. I figured, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm just going to hang around here. But I still had to put my gear on to abandon ship because I'm told to abandon ship. Then we're going, because we can't get the water out fast enough. We had bilges. And the bilges weren't, I don't know why it wasn't. I said it's a new ship, right? It couldn't take the water out fast enough. That was coming. The waves were like 20, 30 feet in the
So
air.
the pumps weren't
The pumps,
doing their job.
the pumps weren't doing the job that it should do. So then the captain took and reversed that order and said, keep bilging it out.
And you made it, obviously.
We made it. But just think, if the executive officer, if the captain had gone along with what the executive officer wanted to do, we'd have all jumped off the ship and we'd have all died. Because what are you going to do with 20, 30-foot waves?
So was the ship sailing on its
Yeah.
own, or were you part of a group at that point?
We're part of a group. We had all these small crafts. We'd had about maybe 20 small crafts going in the water. How many people do you think would make it? With these small crafts in the water with 20 to 30 foot high waves.
Not many of them,
Okay.
probably.
Not many. So I'm saying it was a crazy situation. The whole thing was crazy, going in and out, and here I am.
So can you tell us anything that you came away from in your service that really sticks in your mind? You know?
Well, the only thing that sticks in my mind is that when we went to these islands, we were advised not to go into the jungle. We were advised to stay close to the shore because they were afraid that there were a lot of snipers there.
Oh, so these islands weren't necessarily completely secured.
No, it's secure. So that was very interesting going over there, and I don't remember too much about it, but I remember being on the islands, and they let you off in groups, and they wanted you back at a certain time, and we'd all get back on a small craft, and it would take us back to the ship. So it was sort of like a day. It was off the ship. I don't know the purpose of us going on the island. I know there were like soldiers and other people on these islands besides us. But I was only 18. I didn't know what was going on.
So did you enjoy your couple of years in the service?
Well, the 2.5 years or so, or 2 3/4 years that I was there, yeah, it was enjoyable.
Are you still in touch with any of the guys that you sailed with? Or were you?
There was
have you
two
been?
people. There was 2 people that I was very friendly with, and when I got out, I would write to them and correspond with them. But that lasted maybe 3-4 years, and then that stopped.
So there were no reunions of.
I never went to any reunion.
So after you got home, what did you do?
Oh, after I got home, I decided that I wanted to get my, I wanted to graduate college, then I wanted to graduate high school, so I went to Temple University. I think I went there for 6 months and I got my degree. And then I continued on and I got an associate degree there in engineering, and then I went to another school. I'm trying to think of the name of the school that I went to. I went to another school to get my bachelor's. When I went to Temple, I had an associate in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and another type of engineering. I had a lot of credits here. When I went to Temple, I had like 200 credits. I put a lot of time in there. But they weren't giving out degrees at that point. So all I had was a lot of credits. And I converted this over and just went to another school, which I was able to get my degree. And then I also had gone to University of what other university? I'm trying to think of the name of it. I think it was Penn State that I took education here. And I did about a couple of years of work in education, so I got a lot of education background. While I went to work for the federal government. I took a lot of courses with the federal government, and I got a lot of background as far as training people, because that was one of my jobs, to train people. So when I worked for the federal government, I would go out and we built. The first thing that I did with them was I worked for the Navy Crane Center. Do you want to hear about that Navy Crane Center?
Sure.
I worked for the Navy Crane Center, and the Navy Crane Center, that was new. And the fellow there that I worked for, he was like a GS-12 like I was. And he's the one that hired me, and he hired me as a temporary employee, since they weren't hiring permanent employees.
Is this at the Navy Yard?
This is at the Navy Yard. So he's a 12. And instead of taking care of me, I'm doing all the work for him and helping him with the program and going to Washington to bring the money back for him. He just took care of his buddies and didn't take care of me, which means I couldn't get my 13. You got to remember, I went in as a 12 and I left as a 12. Except I went as a step 1 12 when I left, it was a step 10. But here I was Jewish. So therefore, all his friends moved to the 13th position, and he says, he did something to me that upset me very much. He asked me to do something which was illegal. He needed money to spend for something. He had me write a requisition, which was wrong. So he had me writing requisitions. That's wrong, to make somebody do requisitions for you and sign my name. So when the guy that was in charge of that department looked at it, he says, look, he says, you can't order this stuff here because you don't have the money in there to buy it. He says, besides that, you're not entitled to do that. Who gave you permission to do that? I says, my supervisor. So he calls my supervisor on the phone. My supervisor says, no, he says, he never told me to do it. So that was a mark against me. And but he knew there was something wrong. So somehow it got washed away. But that's when I left him. I said to myself, this guy's a bum.
So you got out of the.
I got out of the working for the Navy Crane Center. And then I joined Northern Division. And that's when I moved into another department, which was basically engineers like myself.
So this is still working for the government.
But now Northern Division took care of all the other activities. We was a central agent. And they was an agent that trained people to do their job. So now I'm training people to do engineering. And I stayed with them for a long time.
So how'd you end up in Cherry Hill?
Oh, my When I came out of the service, my parents didn't have any money, so I had to use the money that I got from the Navy to help them buy a house. So the money that I got, so the Navy helped my parents buy the house because I signed for it.
And you obviously bought the house in Cherry Hill.
No,
No?
it was bought in Philadelphia, where my mother was, with my father.
Okay.
Then I met my wife at a dance. And her wife and her father had right now the type of work I was doing engineering work. And I was going to school, but I was doing engineering work. On my own, working for different companies. So I went to the dance, and she was on the side there. She was a young girl, pretty young girl. And I looked at her and I said to myself, should I dance with her or shouldn't I dance with her? You know what I mean? So I figured, okay, I'll go over and ask her for a dance. So I go over and I asked her for a dance. Okay, she had come with her friends. So she danced with me, and we danced a few times. And then she gave me her phone number. When the night was over, because I spent the night with her dancing. It was at a synagogue. I was dancing it was a synagogue dance. So then I contacted her and I took her out, and I had a car because my brother and I both bought a car, so he had the car half the time and I had the car the other half the time. So when I had the car, I would take her out to dance. But the strange thing happened. Her father says to me, he says, don't worry. He says, when I told his daughter one weekend that I couldn't take her out, he told his daughter, don't worry about it. Just tell him to come here and he'll take my car. I was the only boy that he ever gave his car to. Wouldn't trust anyone with his car. So he gave me
I
the
wouldn't either.
If you wanted to get rid of your daughter, you'd give the car away. I didn't know that. So I didn't know what was going through his mind. So I took her to the movies. I brought her home, and then I would take the bus home from his house. And then we got. I was with her for going with her for about 6 months, and then I asked her if she wanted to get married, and she said yes. And her parents basically paid for the wedding. I paid for the other half because my parents had no money. I was the one that had the money because I said I always worked and made money.
So what year did you get married?
My God, it's just like my wife asked me. What's
Oh, I thought that'd be an easy one.
Okay, 1 second. 1926. I think it was 1934.
No, it had to be later than. It was after the war, right? It was after the war.
1 second. 1926. Okay, 1926 is when I was born. 20 years later, it's 1946.
Right.
Okay. Okay, 1946. It's 20 years later. I said about 1952.
So did you have kids?
Yeah, I had 2 children. About 1956. 56 and 1958.
So getting back to just to kind of wrap up your military history, so you don't stay in touch with any of the guys anymore. Do you know what ever happened to the ship? when it came back, they just,
No, it went out again. It went out for other wars. But do you remember I told you the ship, everyone on the ship was discharged?
right,
So you sort of lost contact. A new group must have gone on that ship, because that ship was used for later wars, other wars that they had.
Korea, I
Yeah.
assume.
That ship was still used.
All right.
But I never understood why they just threw me out. But I guess that was what they were doing.
There were a lot of guys that, you know, the war was over,
The war was over, yeah.
so.
Anyway, you have a synopsis of what I was talking about, and
Yeah,
I don't know what else.
That was great. That was great. That's what we're looking for.
Right. I was lucky. I got aboard a brand new ship that failed maneuvers, that wasn't built on time. Had I been aboard any other ship, in 2 months, I would have been over in Germany. So I'd have been in Germany at the beginning of 1944.
And had the ship been there in 1944, I'm sure it would have been involved with the invasion.
Right.
Being
Had
what
the
type
ship-
of ship it was.
You're right. Had the ship been done in time, first of all, had the ship been completed before I was ready to go aboard it, and when I went aboard it, or had it been done before, a year before, then I got on a ship, it would have automatically gone over there. Like you say, within 2 months, I'd have been over there.
Right.
That was crazy.
So did you feel like you missed out?
No, I don't feel like I missed anything. I enjoyed my time in the service, and saw the world. Look, when I came back, the ship came back. Don't forget, I was in California, because the ship, when the ship went on the West Coast there, I stopped in California and some of the ports over there.
Uh-huh.
That was on the way back, we did that. So, I mean, it was very interesting to see the world.
As an 18-year-old, I'm sure.
As 18 years old, it was very interesting to see the world. What 18-year-old gets a chance to see the world like that? Unless your parents send you all over. Your
Right.
parents have a lot of money to send you all over.
Well, I appreciate it. It was great.
Okay, now, do you want me to get a picture of myself, or you don't need it?
I can take a picture with
Because if you need a picture, I will make a point of bringing the picture, making a copy of it, and bringing it in.
That'd be great if we could
Yeah,
get
that
it.
would be wonderful.
Okay, so I'll bring it.
Still have your uniform?
No, that's gone. I wouldn't fit in it anyway. I mean, I was half the size I am now.
My dad used to talk about how he got home and his mother took all his stuff and sold it all.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
You
he never got over that. Never got over it. It pissed him off his entire life.
I smuggled the gun back with me, but I don't know whatever happened to it.
Uh-oh.
I brought it to my, I know you weren't allowed to do that. I disassembled it completely. It was in about 50 different parts. And I smuggled it back.
In parts.
Yeah, and, when I got home, I played around with fixing it up, but I never did anything with it.
Good.
It was in the old house. It was a big rifle.
Oh,
It was
okay.
a big rifle. It wasn't a little handgun. It was a big rifle. with a bayonet on the end and everything else.
Is it a Japanese rifle?
Japanese, yeah. Yeah, that
Did you
was-
find it or did you buy it from,
I found it, and I disassembled it, and I was gonna keep it as a.
Souvenir.
sure,
But you know, when you're 20 years old, you don't
I know.
plan ahead like that. So somewhere, someone got the gun. Who knows what they did with it? But it was a big rifle. I mean, you'd never see anyone outside with a big. It wasn't like a rifle like the police use. They had a rifle that might be this big. That was it. They were these big ones.
Uh-huh. Okay, I guess, if you guys have any questions, we're
Okay.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I showed you this over here. Did you want any of it?